Hi, and welcome to the Marketing for Book Coaches show. This is where we explore the essential marketing techniques that will set your book coaching business apart. My name is Anne. I am your host and a business coach, helping bold book coaches build thriving and profitable businesses. In today's episode, we'll be exploring the strategy of leaving social media and its unique challenges and benefits for book coaches. Our discussion will focus on how you can implement this approach and still have a financially sustainable business. To dive deeper into the topic, we are joined by a podcaster and a writer who knows firsthand what it is like to build a business and community of social media. Known for her bold decision to leave social media in 2021, she now hosts of The Grid, a podcast all about helping entrepreneurs thrive without social media. Let's get ready for a thought-provoking conversation with Amelia Hruby. Hi, Amelia.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I am pretty sure that this is one of those conversations that we are all looking forward to because we hear so much about social media and how we have to be on social media. And then you come in and you say, you know what? You don't need to be on social media. Before we start the conversation, I would like to know, what is your story with getting off social media or getting off the grid, like you named your
Yeah.
podcast?
Yeah, of course. So I always like to start out by saying that I spent a decade of my life being all in on social media. I got Facebook when I was in high school. I got on Instagram toward the end of college. And I spent the next many years becoming a content creator. And I, in 2019, I signed a book deal with Andrews McMeel Publishing. And when I signed that deal, everyone told me that I needed to grow my platform for my book to be successful. I actually feel like I got very lucky that I got a book deal with a really small platform. And so as the straight A student that I am, I committed to putting even more time, energy, effort, and money into my social media platform. So I spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours probably working on growing my Instagram audience. And by the time my book came out in October of 2020, I was tired and I was
Mm,
disillusioned and I was realizing many things. One was just the extent and depth of the surveillance that was happening on social media, how companies were monitoring our behavior to sell things to us. And I was feeling more and more uncomfortable and frustrated with that. I was also feeling very anxiously attached to the app. I would check it all the time. It was really playing a outsized role in my
mm,
self-worth. And I also realized that I didn't think social media really helped me sell that many books. I didn't hit the sort of goals I had set for myself. I really wanted to sell at least 5,000 copies of my first book, and I sold closer to 3,000 copies of my book, which is still a
mm.
success in many ways, but just wasn't quite
Yeah.
the success I wanted it to be. And that really, those kind of three triangulations of it feels bad, it's surveilling me, and it's not even really working, led me to make the decision to leave at the beginning of 2021. And so I told my audience I'd be leaving in January of that year. And then I logged off for good on April 9th, 2021. And that is when I left social media, and I have not really looked back since.
It seems such an amazing decision to make. I mean, I'm not on Instagram. I'm only on LinkedIn. But even then, I cannot imagine just switching off. And you haven't looked back at all since that moment. Like you haven't gone back, not been tempted even to go back.
No, my primary account has just been, it is still up. So you can go look at it. I'm at Amelia Jo Hruby on Instagram, but I have not logged in. I have not done things. I don't look at DMs. I don't check it. I don't go there. I don't have the Instagram app on my phone. I'm not logged in on my browser. I am not present there. And I had deleted Facebook well before that. I was
Mm,
never very active on Twitter. I had a LinkedIn presence. I guess I still have a LinkedIn profile and I used it for a while, but I think LinkedIn had a slower transformation to becoming social media. And I left that platform earlier this year entirely. Once again, I logged out and have not gone back to do anything or look at anything. And so, yeah, I'm really off of social media. Although, of course, there's so many forms social media takes these days. So it becomes more and more challenging sometimes to say
Mhm.
I'm off social media, because people will be like, well, are you on TikTok? And no, I'm not on TikTok. But like, do you have a YouTube account? Well, yeah, I do watch YouTube videos sometimes. So, what it means to be off social media is a bit in question, but I would claim that I am off of social media and have been for over 3 years now.
That's actually really good remark that you make on the fact it's difficult to define what is being off social media. What does it mean exactly for you to be off social media? Because I was asking myself with the question, podcast, for example, can we not see it somehow, some way as a social media, or that is definitely not a social media?
So I think this question is like, I don't think there's a clear right or wrong answer to what is social media. I don't consider podcasts to be social media at all, but I'm sure there are other people who can have clear arguments for why they would be. To me, social media is really characterized by platforms where we have profiles and feeds, and we engage in public through those profiles and on those feeds. And so I think that that's a really common structure that we see on Facebook, we see on Instagram, we see on TikTok, we see on LinkedIn. I think it's not quite how YouTube works. There's like a similarity, but it's not quite the
Mm-mm.
same there. There's like less emphasis perhaps on the profile, although there is still a lot of public interaction that's happening on YouTube. I think there are ways it is sometimes a social media platform. I think that LinkedIn has become social media. I think it was originally a lot more about social networking. It was about kind of sharing a resume and connecting with people in order to contact them more privately through a message or an email. And I think now LinkedIn emphasizes the feed and keeping all of your communication on the feed and posting to the feed. And I think that makes it more social media than social networking. And then I think we've also seen the rise of platforms like Substack, which as a newsletter platform, I would not call social media, but if you're using the Substack app or you're engaging with Substack notes, I would definitely call that a social media platform. I'm trying to think what I left out. I guess I left out Twitter or X, which is one of the classic, I would say, social media
Yeah.
platforms that has evolved and devolved over the years. So yeah, um, that I say that I'm off of social media because I don't use any of those major
Mm,
platforms. And I think podcasting is different because you don't have a profile or a feed, and there's actually no or very little public engagement around a podcast.
mm.
And that's part of why I love podcasts so much, but also it's part for some people why they don't like podcasts or they don't want to make one, because they're like, well, how do I interact with people? Like I can't reach them. They can't respond to me. What's that look like? And so there's a sort of, I think, a real difference in podcasting in that way.
Yeah, and I would guess also a difference in mindset, because of course we all have gone through that. You explained it so well as well. You go on Instagram and you have the likes, so you continue to follow because you want to have that likes, and you don't have that with podcasts, and you don't have that with like when you are not on social media. So would you say that maybe the very first step that as a book coach, if you want to go get off social media, is working on that mindset, telling yourself, well, you're not going to be the next big content creator with 1 million views on a post you put on Instagram.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that. And I think there are a few layers there. So, one piece that we have to move through, like in our mindset, is shifting our metrics of success. So, success can't be defined by how many likes you have on a post or how many comments or DMs that you get. And I actually think that's really important for a book coach or any business owner, because likes on a post are not a direct proxy for how many clients you have or how much money you're making, which to me are probably the most important things in having a financially resourced business as a book coach or anything else. So I think that we need to shift our metrics of success, and that's one piece of it. I also think that we have to let go of any attachment that like our self-worth has to those metrics or to that sort of public posting and response there. That's been a huge shift for me, like really recentering in myself and less in, what does the app tell me that I should like, or what does the app tell me is important, et cetera. Like pulling that back into our own sense of self and self-worth and what matters. And that again is those success metrics. And then, as you said, a lot of us, I think, have to be honest that what we want out of social media a little bit is to like go viral and get famous. And we have to release and grieve that dream. Like we have to let go of, for me, it was like, I am not going to be the Jenna Kutcher of the online business world. I am just not. I'm not going to have that many legs. I'm not going to grow a business like that. I'm going to do something else. And I think it's a lot easier to step back or away from social media if you acknowledge any of those like fleeting dreams that you may have and you name them, and then you can work on releasing them. And that will allow you to operate differently and to shift both your mindset and your practices.
Yeah, it's very easy said, Amelia, but I already start getting panicked of like, oh wow, that is true. We all have this dream of the post going viral, like you said, build the big businesses that seems to be at that. But I mean, there are people who do it, who build businesses without social media. So we're the book coach. We've decided we go out of social media. We have changed our mindset. What do we do next?
Yeah, so I always recommend having a gradual approach to leaving social media. So through my podcast, Off the Grid, I have talked to many, many people who have left the platforms. And some of them have a sort of like burn it down mentality. They're like, I got to get out of here. And they're off. And they don't tell anybody. They just like shut down their profile and they're gone. I think that as a business owner, I suggest a slower, more strategic approach. And so what I typically advise people to do is to make the decision that you will be leaving a platform, or if you're like very drastically decreasing your presence there, like making that decision and then sharing it with your audience or your community. So if you're on Instagram, it's a post. If you're on TikTok, maybe it's a video, whatever it might be, like sharing that decision and how you made it and why you made it. And then I would keep doing that for a series of weeks or even months, like continuing to create content and talk about why you're making this decision. And when you're doing that, you want to be pointing people somewhere else. Where can they stay in touch with you? So for most people, I recommend that be an email newsletter. And that you take, again, a few weeks or months to be reminding people, I am leaving this platform. Please subscribe to my newsletter. Or if it's not a newsletter for you, it's like, please subscribe to my podcast. Please DM me your info so we can stay in touch. Whatever it might be, like you want to create an off-ramp for yourself and for all the relationships you've cultivated on social media. And so I really recommend, like, if you are a book coach who wants to leave social media, I think you need to shift that mindset we talked about. You need to identify and create another marketing channel for yourself. How are you going to communicate and share with potential clients, current clients, future clients? Outside of social media. And then you need to take the time to transition as much of your audience as possible from the social media platforms you're on to that other marketing channel. And again, this can take a few weeks. It can take a few months. If you're not ready to leave yet, also like still create that other marketing channel. It's just good to give yourself options. Like I never want to see anybody who is all in and only in on social media in their marketing. It's just not a good business practice. Like you should have, I hate to use the word should, I think that the healthiest businesses have diverse income streams and diverse marketing channels, at least a couple that you're working with. So whether you leave social media or not, I'm out here to say, like, start a newsletter. And if you do want to leave social, start your newsletter and help people transition there before you actually exit.
Yeah, I love that idea. That could be really like a year project. You tell yourself, okay, with January, I want to get out of the platform by December, and I give myself that year to really get off of the platforms. Now, okay, we get off the platform, but how do you start seeing what is that other marketing channel that can work, like newsletter or podcast? There are lots of opportunities out there, but how do you know that, okay, this is the one that I can take my audience to?
Yeah. So this is the point where everybody wants me to give them a like one size fits all answer or a quick fix or a magic bullet that's like, start a newsletter and it will fix everything for you. I think email is the most popular option, but I want to say that, like, how do you choose what comes next? It's going to be based on how you like to create and share, and where and how your ideal clients like to show up and get information and hang out. So for some people, I think with book coaches, you probably love the written word. So I think an email newsletter would be a great fit. writing, sending a weekly or monthly newsletter, communicating with potential clients through direct emails and through the sort of newsletter broadcast channel. Like, I think those are great ways or great options for a book coach looking to leave social media. I think for other book coaches, you may find it way easier to speak aloud, to record a quick podcast. And so you could launch a podcast or even a private podcast, which is a podcast that people have to give you their email address to listen to. So you could have a marketing channel that's less around like, I'm going to sit down and write a newsletter. And maybe it's like, every Monday, I record a 10-minute voice note and it goes out to everybody subscribed to this. So I think that email newsletters and podcasts are my two favorite marketing channels and possibilities for folks who are looking to leave social media. And I think that's just because they're two very common ways that I think if book coaches are looking for book authors, authors definitely are hanging out in their email inbox. They're listening to podcasts. You could also consider starting a YouTube channel if you like to show up on video. That could be a great option for you. And no matter what you do of any of those things, I think that picking one, committing to that with some level of consistency or frequency that works for you and is sustainable for you is super important. And then also putting energy into getting yourself in front of other people's audiences. Like, it's not just that, I have 500 Instagram followers and I got 100 of them to join my email list. So now I just talked to those 100 people. It's like, okay, I talked to those 100 people and I write guest posts for my friends' newsletters and I go to this writing conference and I give a talk and hand out a bookmark with my newsletter sign up link on it. Like, there's all these ways that once we pick that other marketing channel, then we have to send people to it. Like, we have to drive traffic to it, as the marketers will say. So like, which channel you pick is going to be based on your skills and talents and desires and energy. And then not forgetting that, like, once you pick one, your whole job, half your job as a business owner is to get new people there.
Yeah. I like the fact that you say, okay, it's not just about having the email newsletter, because that's also a bit the problem. I think many of us have social media. It's like we put out a lot of content and then we just hope that the gods of social media will shine their light and bam, it will happen. So what you're saying is here, okay, you still will have to deal with that pressure if you go, for example, to the email newsletter, to the podcast. You still will have to find a way to attract those people. So you're talking about public speaking. Are there other possibilities that you say this is how you can get people to see your content without having to go to social media?
Yeah, I mean, I've created a whole list of 100 ways to share your work without social media. So I think you could literally do any of those things to be sending people to your work. So yes, you can do public speaking. I really like podcast guesting, being a guest on podcasts as a way to send new people your way. You could join, there are all sorts of like online summits and bundles or ways that people get their work in front of new audiences and new potential clients. I think, anytime you can partner up and cross promote with people in your industry is a great opportunity, whether that be cross promoting in a newsletter, on a podcast. You can send postcards to people. You can put up flyers at bookstores. There's so many ways you can share your work. But I think the other thing I want to say, just in response to what you had said, is like, even if you're on social media, the way that the algorithms function at this point, nobody is sending you a ton of free traffic, right? Like, people go to Instagram or TikTok and you have that mindset of like, okay, cool. If I just show up here enough and I show up in the right way, like, the Instagram gods will like do me a favor and send, hundreds of thousands of new people to my account. But like, that is not working for anybody I talk to anymore, quite honestly. Like, I don't know anyone who feels like they are getting a lot of consistent and good traffic from the algorithms. And so even if you're on social media, you actually still need to be doing all this work I'm talking about to get your work in front of new people. Like, that's just essential marketing work to be doing. And I agree with you. It's like a missing piece for so many small business owners and book coaches, I'm sure, among that.
Yes. No, absolutely. I think, I was very LinkedIn, and I totally agree. LinkedIn has changed so much, and its algorithm has changed so much. This conversation is giving me a lot of ideas. So maybe in a couple of months, I will reach out and say, Amelia, I got off LinkedIn as well. Because like you say, the algorithm is no longer working. And it's such an important piece because we're always told as business owners, you have to be on social media. And then when it doesn't work, it is very frustrating, and it sucks the energy out of yourself and the business. So yeah, I see it with my book coaches. I see it also a lot with myself. Thank you
Yeah,
so
I
much.
mean, me too, honestly. Like I that was a big part of my journey. Like I said, I was all in on social media and eventually I was like, "Oh, yeah, like Instagram and the Instagram algorithm or the LinkedIn algorithm or the TikTok algorithm, like they don't exist to serve me and my business. They exist to
Mm,
serve them and their business, right? They're only interested in keeping me on the platform so I buy more stuff. They're not particularly interested in helping me sell things." And so I just had like that was a really clarifying realization for me and helping me get off of the platforms. And having like made that really strong argument just now, I will also say that I do understand there are ways to use social media that embrace more direct communication where you are direct messaging people, whether it be on LinkedIn or on Instagram or on Facebook. Like you are finding ways kind of like on the fringes of these platforms, it feels like, to foster those direct connections and you are reaching out to new people. I just think you have to be a very active participant in that in a way that maybe in the past that could happen for you pretty passively on social media. I don't think that's the case anymore. So
mm.
I think that this advice like kind of stands whether you're on social media or not is like, how are you actively marketing your work to new people and directly speaking to potential clients that you feel may be like warm or almost ready to come work with you?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. Um, is there like because you talked about a couple of weeks, month, is there also this other metrics of like really get off if you have, for example, 1,000 people on your newsletter or 1,000 listeners to your podcast?
I think that it varies so much based on the type of business that you have. And I know we're here to talk specifically about book coaches. So I think that in that case, it varies so much on the types of clientele that you have and how many clients you want to work with at any given time or over the course of a year. So it can be important to know, like, okay, if I email 10 people that like if so for instance, if I was thinking about like a little funnel for a book coach, I might come up with something like, okay, I'm going to host this free workshop and I'm really going to try to get it in front of hundreds of people and see how many people I can get to sign up. Maybe I get 25 people to sign up and I do the free workshop for those 25 people. And then I learn that 3 of them booked my services. Like, I think that doing these sorts of marketing experiments and learning how many people can you get in front of and how many of them actually convert to be your client, like that then allows you to build some practices and patterns. And like, this is what I repeat over time. And so if I knew that if I hosted this webinar and it got, 100 people signed up or 25 people showed up, 3 of them became my client, and I know that I need 9 clients a year, then like all of my energy would be around, okay, how do I get 75 people on these calls with me so I can book my nine clients or whatnot? And that math isn't like, well, I have 1,000 subscribers now, so I can leave social media, right? Like it's much more
Mm,
focused. If you are a sort of data-driven person, I would recommend orienting your data around leads and conversions rather than around subscribers, which is a much more like passive um, metric. I mean, it's
yes.
more active than like a follower, but it's still much more passive than an actual lead. And so I think that those are the sorts of benchmarks that I would look at and try to get comfortable with. And as you do that over time, like in my experience, there's a certain point. For some people, it takes a year, for some people, 3 years, for some people, 10 years. Like there's a certain point where you have done enough experiments, you've gathered enough data, you've seen enough patterns that you're like, okay, I know a couple different ways I can book the number of clients that I need, and I feel confident doing that. And for a lot of people, I think that's where you get before you leave social media. Like you want to develop that confidence. I didn't have that. I just jumped off or not jumped off. Like I left and then figured it out from there. But I understand there are like different ways to feel ready. And that's the instance where I'm like, if having 1,000 newsletter subscribers makes you feel safe enough to leave, great. Let that be your metric.
Okay.
I'm just
Yeah.
not sure it's the most helpful in terms of like, it's not a great proxy for your sales.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I recently had a book coach, and she has more than 5,000 subscribers to her newsletter, and she cannot, like, it's a very passive newsletter. So it's not because you have that number, but I think I'm probably putting myself a bit too much in the spotlight of the book coach, because I'm like, yeah, but you're leaving, you cannot just leave with 10 people on your newsletter. You have to have a metrics. So yeah, thank you very much for clarifying that. I was also wondering, you talked about that experience where you were the author who really pushed and pressured into social media and you went at that game. Do you think that there's an opportunity as a book coach to say, hey, I'm a book coach who's not on social media, and I can help you as well as an author to build up that platform or to help you write your book without being on social media and having that pressure?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I hear from authors all the time who are only on social media because they feel like they have to be in order to get the book deals they want or to sell their books. Like, I cannot tell you how many people I hear from in this position, like so many. And so I think that there is a real potential to like differentiate yourself among book coaches by kind of being in this niche of like not being on social media and becoming really good at coaching and marketing and positioning around that. So I think that there is definitely an opportunity there. And probably what it would require is that like you're a book coach, you're a fantastic editor, you can do that. And you have built some skills just more generally around marketing without social media that you can provide advice on, because I think authors do want that. And I think they would be
Mm,
interested in working with a coach who can bring that lens as well, in addition to the lens of like, let's work on like your book itself.
yes, but especially now there is so many books that come out every year. I mean, I would say even every day. So it is difficult to stand out. And I can imagine as an author, it's like a book coach. When I myself, I'm very happy you came on the podcast, but I myself, I'm like, oh my God, Amelia, going off social media. So as an author, I think you go through that same pressure as well. So having someone who can support you with that is, I think, is a great way. Um, so you left social media in 2021. How has it been going with your business? Because that is probably the one question we all ask. So very nice,
Yeah.
Amelia, all your explanation, but did it really work for you? Does it really work for you?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely does work for me. So the sort of chronology for me is that I left social media in April of 2021 and I soft launched my business like that summer and was officially open for business in September 2021. So I actually launched this whole business without social media.
I was
It
going to
wasn't
say,
so much.
I just want to like interrupt you here, but so because I thought you had your business and then you went off social media and then but so you didn't have your business and you really launched it without social media.
Correct. Yes. So when I was on social media, I was selling my book and I sold some small courses. And I would say during that period of time, I was probably making like $5,000 to $10,000 a year selling the things I was selling on social media. And then I left social media and I stopped selling those things. And I launched a service-based business providing podcast production services. And I have launched and grown this business with no social media. We have no social media presence. And it is going great. I mean, I've been able to build a studio that I am the executive producer of. I have a small team of contractors. We consistently, make the average revenue, annual revenue at this point, it's like $150,000 a year. So like I'm bringing in new clients. I've got people coming in. We have a relatively healthy profit margin within that. And I think that that's all been possible because I've really focused on relationship marketing and growing through relationships rather than spending time creating so much content or being on social media. And when I am creating content, it's incredibly strategic. It is free resources for the Softer Sounds website that are all SEO optimized so that new people can find us through search, or it is podcast episodes through Off the Grid that are really focused on reaching my ideal clients who might eventually become podcast clients. And I would say that, I've been in business for over 3 years now, and it took like a year or even 2 years to really get all of that running
Mm.
smoothly. But now, like, there is water pouring into the flywheel. I don't really spend much time at all on marketing. Now I just like create the podcast I love making and keep showing up, and I'm getting inquiries and I'm booking clients through those channels. So it has taken time, but I really invested in relationships. I really invested in my podcast, which I'm great at. And I do send a newsletter regularly, especially for the podcast. Like all of those things are really working at this stage in my business.
I love that, as that is just such a great conclusion to our interview, because it gives us hope, right? It's like you can get off social media and you can actually survive. So who
Mm-hmm.
knew? Um, no, no. Uh, you talked a lot about your free leaving social media kit. Can you maybe give us a little bit more information about that and where we can find it?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to offthegrid.fun/toolkit, you can download my free leaving social media toolkit. It includes 3 tools. It has a 5-step plan for leaving any social platform. So that is going to walk you through kind of the gradual steps I suggested earlier for exiting any platform, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Like it's a process that will work wherever you are. So that's the first piece. The second piece is that list of 100 ways to share your work off social media that I mentioned earlier. So it's got a full list, tons of expansive ideas, some of which are very practical, some of which are a little off the wall, just to get you dreaming and believing that you can share your work and your business without social media. And then the third tool is a creative marketing experiments database to help you take that list of 100 ways and turn it into like an actionable seasonal plan to do marketing experiments so that you can get that data I've been talking about, so that you can have the experience and the information that helps you set yourself up for success. So that's, again, all in the Leaving Social Media Toolkit, and that's all at offthegrid.fun/toolkit.
I absolutely love those resources. So I just wanted to reassure all of you, it will be in the description of the notes. So you just have to go down and you will find the link. I will also put a link to the book that Amelia wrote. So you will find all of that therein. Thank you so much again, Amelia. So as a little summary of our podcast, so the main lesson to learn here about is that we can get off social media and it can still work. And Amelia gave us a great process to go through. First, work on your mindset. What is success for you? 2, have a credible approach during which you try to figure out what is your preferred marketing method and what is your conversion rate. And number 3, give it time. It will not happen from one day to another. You have to give it a little bit of time. And that's the end of our podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed our discussion, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter, crafted exclusively for book coaches, where I share business strategy, tips, exclusive resources, and insight to help you grow your business. You can find the sign-up link in the episode description below. And remember, just because you're off the grid doesn't mean you are off the map. Who needs a viral post when you can build a business that lasts? Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.